If you are under the age of 13 and reading or watching this video, click off immediately. This is not for you. Thank you. Please do not attack or harass anyone mentioned. Harassment is never okay. Hello, my name is Red. I am 15 years old as of writing and making this video. As you may know, I was a fan of Ma Shadow for a very long time. However, that is not the case anymore. I do not feel the need to go into detail over how we met and our friendship, as it is mostly irrelevant to the case at hand. All that needs to be known is that we became friends when I was 10 and they were 17. I think it is also important to note that I met Moss and started talking with them before they had met Dino. The claim that Ma Shadow was a minor when coming into contact with Dino is false, as I'll get into later. To get to the point, Ma Shadow is not a pedophile. They are not attracted to children. They are also not a zoophile. They are not attracted to animals. However, Ma Shadow is a groomer. I do not believe that Ma Shadow groomed me. We weren't that close and didn't talk on a regular basis, but the fact that they were in contact with me when I was 10 and they were 17 does show that they have a history of talking to minors, even if it wasn't with the intention of grooming. Unfortunately, my friend Dino is a victim of Ma Shadow. He was groomed. It is important to note that grooming and pedophilia are not the same thing. Unfortunately, Moss doesn't seem to understand this, as shown by this YouTube comment. Grooming has nothing to do with romantic/sexual attraction is a blatantly false statement. According to nspcc.org, grooming is defined as someone building a relationship and trust and emotional connection with a child or young person so they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse them. Nowhere in this definition does sexual or romantic attraction show up. If it were an integral part of the grooming process, it would be mentioned. This is supported further on in the article when it discusses the types of grooming. Notice how it says types, plural. There is no one set way to groom someone. The most common types of grooming are listed here. A romantic relationship is one of them, but there are many other to follow. I believe that the way Ma Shadow interacted with the minor involved is a form of grooming, just not in a romantic or sexual sense. If I were to put a label on it, I would say that the grooming that took place falls under the as a mentor category, as that is the closest thing that Ma Shadow was to the minor involved. Groomers tend to display common tactics to establish a relationship with their victims. These include, but are not limited to, the ones shown below. Ma Shadow displayed multiple of these throughout their friendship with Dino. They would give them advice and show understanding in the multiple times that Dino would vent to Moss about their struggles. They would give Dino gifts in terms of free art and profile pictures. They would also give them attention by simply being their friend. It is important to note the power imbalance between Moss and Dino. At the time of the deletion of Ma Shadow's Scratch account, they had over 30,000 followers. At the time of writing this, Ma Shadow has over 7,000 subscribers on their YouTube account. Dino, by comparison, was a much smaller creator. With such a large audience, Ma Shadow being friends with Dino was giving them special attention. My friend JT, at SkibbityZophrenic on YouTube, made a video detailing everything that happened with Ma Shadow and Dino. I do not feel the need to go over it all again, but I will place the evidence here to back up my claims. These screenshots are all Ma Shadow's behavior with Dino. JT did a good job of explaining it in his own video, so if you want to look at it all in more depth, you can go watch his video. TLDR though, Ma Shadow talked sexually with Dino, who was 13 at the time when they were 21. It does not matter if they were getting sexual gratification from it. It does not matter if they were attracted to Dino or not. What matters is that Ma Shadow talked in a sexual manner to a child. To get to the more recent stuff, however, Ma Shadow in the span of 2 days released 2 separate videos discussing the situation. One titled, "Yeah, I'm aware of the grooming accusations, and the proof is actually so bad," and another titled, "I read the leaked script of my cancellation video, old video." The first video that Ma Shadow released about the situation went over an incredibly old document that was never supposed to be released about the Ma Shadow situation. Me and my friends all admit that and understand that the initial document was immature, unpolished, unfinished, and overall bad. Yet despite the document clearly being unedited and unfinished, Ma Shadow decided to respond anyway. At the beginning of the video, Mashadow says, quote, "They start off by saying to not harass anyone about this video, but they're literally accusing me of a really immoral crime, so I'm not sure saying that really matters," end quote. This is wrong on so many levels. For starters, telling the audience to not harass anyone mentioned in a document or video callout is a common courtesy in the art commentary community. But it is there for a reason. No one can tell what someone's going to do. If you don't distinctly tell people, do not harass this person, they could very well take it as neutrality or even encouragement of harassment, which is not something anyone should want to do. And it's interesting to note this considering Mashadow themselves put my full Scratch profile on display in their "Yeah, I'm aware of the grooming allegations" video. Mashadow's audience is mostly compiled of young children. Young children often need someone to tell them to not impulsively act on something, especially when it involves someone they look up to. By putting my profile on display for your over 7,000 subscriber audience, that leaves me open to harassment. Now, I'm sure this wasn't intentional. I do not believe that Mashadow was trying to get their audience to attack or harass me, and luckily nothing has happened so far. But this alone shows Mashadow's inability to think ahead and understand the length their audience is willing to go through for them. Moss makes her first point against me and my friends by saying, quote, "JT tries to excuse this by saying this is just how minors joke around. The server had 13-year-olds, and I personally didn't know about adult things until I was 16, so it's extremely gross of them to be teaching these children adult things when they could possibly have no idea what these are," end quote. This is a rather strange point to make. To say the average child does not know about sexual topics at age 13 is honestly false. While the average age that children learn about sex does vary, it is a known fact that by 13, children are at least aware of what sex is. The Mayo Clinic states that, quote, "Research shows that the average age children are now exposed to pornography is 13, with some children being exposed by age 7. Digging deeper, 60% of 11 to 13-year-olds are exposed to adult content by accident, and 93% of males and 64% of females under 18 purposely access pornography. All of these statistics correlate with even greater smartphone use in young people," end quote. It is important to note that Mashadow themselves openly admits they were incredibly sheltered as a child and did not know about reproduction until age 16. In their video, "My Ex Was a Convicted Criminal Lunatic," they state, quote, "My high school life was actually insane, especially since my parents had closed me off so much that I didn't know about human reproduction until I was 16, end quote. Because of this incredibly sheltered upbringing, I do not believe that Mashadow is the proper person to fully trust about what age is appropriate to learn about sex. But in any case, it is a well-known fact that by 13, children know about sex and are oftentimes making jokes about it. I, for one, would know, since I was 13 only 2 years ago. And I have been in a public middle school, and the things they say are so horrid that I genuinely don't think I could repeat it. Now, the healthiness of these topics being discussed so openly at a young age is debatable, though I don't necessarily feel the need to get into that whole debate as it is irrelevant to the video. Now, to make things clear, we do admit that in our time in the Westwood server, the sex jokes did go far. We said things we most definitely shouldn't have, and we do admit and apologize for that. It was irresponsible of us to be making those types of jokes in a public environment, and we have worked to change that behavior, though we still do make sex jokes in private, still, because it's funny. Jumping forward to further on in the video, Mashadow tries to claim that we are overly sexual on a children's website, and that because of this, we actively encourage sexual things to be shown to children. This is not true. While it is true that my friends have made more risque jokes on Scratch, such as putting the word "tua" into sentences instead of "tu," a reference to the Hawk Tua meme, which is sexual in nature, this did not occur as often as Mashadow makes it out to be. Because of the uprising in younger children on the internet and on social media, the average child on Scratch is much more likely to know what Hawk Tua is. The sexual connotation behind the Hawk Tua joke has faded due to the immense popularity of the joke. Earlier in the video, Mashadow touches on the racism allegations. After describing the situation in which they refer to JT simply as the Chinese guy rather than by his name, they defended themselves by saying, quote, "Now why did I say this instead of anything else? This is because, I'm being serious, almost every other text he would send in the server, he would mention his race. But because of how often he said that, the only thing I could genuinely remember about JT was that he was Chinese, end quote. This, despite Moss's excuse, is still racist. If all someone can remember about a person is their race, that is strange, to say the very least. Now, I'm aware that Moss Shadow has stated they have memory issues, and while this can be an explanation for their actions in regards to JT's race, it is still not an excuse for the dehumanizing nature behind the statement. To refer to someone simply by their race is to strip them of their humanity. People are much more than their race. JT recently had this to say about the racism. Quote, especially considering he's known me for 2 months, extensively around that time, you do not recognize me beyond my race. Disgusting, 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 end quote. End quote. Like he's also feeding into the rhetoric that that people are white by default, end quote. Now, I am white, so I cannot fully touch on the racism part as I don't experience it on a day-to-day basis, but it does not take a lot to know that referring to someone by their race is dehumanizing and most certainly racist. Later in the video, Moss Shadow discusses my involvement in the situation. Not much of substance is stated until they get to the part where I discuss the trigger list. In the original document, I said, quote, it felt like everything had to be censored and people were getting into fights left and right, end quote. Moss Shadow responds to this by saying, quote, pretending like anxiety disorders don't exist is rude and ableist, end quote. I would like to say that I have never once pretended that anxiety disorders do not exist. I myself struggle with a lot of anxiety on a day-to-day basis and have had intense paranoia episodes where I genuinely convince myself that somebody is going to murder me in my sleep. I know full well that anxiety and panic attacks are real and are nothing to scoff at. However, when things like dancing and prom were on the trigger list at the time, it felt a little silly or even like it was mocking triggers. During my time in the Westwood server, I have never once openly mocked or made fun of the trigger list. I abided by it and respected it despite my own personal feelings on the situation. The rest of Moss Shadow's first video on the situation is more of what I previously covered, so I don't feel the need to go into depth. After I initially watched the video, I was rather upset. By that point, the video covering JT's call-out video against Moss had either not released or I had not seen it. I am not sure of what. In any case, I did comment on Moss's video stating my feelings on the situation. I said, quote, Moss, if you're going to respond to the allegations, respond to the actual video, not an incredibly outdated document. The original doc was never meant to be released. It was unfinished, unpolished, and overall bad. I don't know how you found it. I don't care how. But please do your proper research before making a video about a document none of us stand by. I know you've seen the video, so respond to that, not this, end quote. And they respond with, quote, as I said, I'm blocking everyone in the group. Bye, end quote. This clearly shows Moss's inability to take responsibility when it comes to his actions. He deflects and completely ignores real and serious criticisms because he cannot seem to fathom being in the wrong. The second video that Moss Shadow released about the grooming allegations was titled, quote, yeah, I'm aware of the grooming allegations and the proof is actually so bad, end quote. In the video, Moss Shadow covers the things brought up in JT's video titled, A Famous Egg Scratcher Groomed My Friend. The video starts off with Moss Shadow saying, quote, I found out where a lot of the current pedophile accusations are coming from, end quote. We have said this once, and we will say it 1,000,000 times over. Moss Shadow is not a pedophile. We have never accused Moss Shadow of being a pedophile. We do not think that Moss Shadow is attracted to any minors or minors just in general. The claim that we are is indicative of poor critical thinking skills and a lack of knowledge on what grooming and pedophilia is. Moss also claims that we do not have any proof of our claims, which is blatantly false, as shown by the previous segment. They state, quote, it's pretty bad proof of someone being a pedophile, end quote, which again is a false statement. We are not trying to prove Moss is a pedophile, we are proving that they are a groomer. Moss claims that the reason the grooming allegations were released was because we were upset about the racist comments Moss Shadow made towards JT, as talked about previously. They say, quote, revenge in the form of trying to make people think you're a pedophile isn't okay, end quote. This is blatantly false. We came about the grooming allegations because Moss Shadow is incredibly irresponsible with their platform and was continuing to put kids in danger. See their DeviantArt. Both screenshots taken from Skibidi Zofrenic's YouTube video. Moss later claims that we, quote, spent pretty much all of it sexualizing Liz, which is once again entirely false. In the original document, which, like I said previously, is incredibly outdated and incomplete, we use the term meat rider to refer to Liz once. This was not a sexualization of Liz. If we look at the definition of meat rider, it is in no way sexual, despite the somewhat vulgar language used. The definition is, quote, an informal and somewhat vulgar slang. Meat rider or meat ride means to behave submissive, subservient, or over-flattering manner to someone, essentially acting as a yes man or toe licker. We were saying that Liz was a yes man, not that she was having sex with Moss like how they claimed we were. It is important to note that throughout the video, Moss Shadow continuously brings up this child named Magenta. Magenta is an 11 to 12-year-old artist who has most certainly done some very weird stuff to Moss Shadow. She is in fact in the wrong for this, however, continuing to bring attention to Magenta is only going to make her do this more. It is the attention she wants, and Moss gives her that. Magenta clearly has a lot of issues. She doesn't need Moss Shadow giving her any sort of attention because that's only going to feed into her delusions. She needs help, not Moss Shadow constantly bashing on her in videos that are not related to her in the slightest. Later on in the video, Moss Shadow says, quote, it definitely feels a lot like projection when they are saying I like kids, end quote, which is incredibly strange considering how me and my friends are all minors. We make sexual jokes to each other because it's funny. A joke about changing a username to weed cum gay porn returns and you sending a minor cropped porn and encouraging them to draw sexual/suggestive art pieces for your gratification are two incomparable things. There is a clear distinction between minors making jokes among themselves and an adult doing the same to a child. To single JT and Dino out for this behavior is incredibly hypocritical, considering you yourself has made sexual jokes towards Dino and others. A small side note, Moss Shadow mentions JT spraying Hawk Tua on his school's wall as a point against him. What I fail to understand is how that is relevant at all to the case at hand. There's quite literally no reason to be talking about what JT did completely unrelated to the situation in a video specifically about the situation. Moss Shadow later claims that he first came into contact with him when he was a minor. Quote, at most 17, he says. This is false. I came into contact with Moss Shadow when he was 17. I was 10. Dino is a couple months younger than me. Dino is 13, and the screenshot shown in the video. So the claim that Moss was 17 when talking to a 13-year-old Dino is entirely untrue. Furthermore, Moss Shadow showed snippets of his NSFW art to Dino from his X/Twitter account. To make an 18+ account on X/Twitter, one must be 18+ themselves. This means that Moss Shadow was in fact an adult when engaging in these discussions with Dino. Moss Shadow then goes on to claim that Dino was sending them suggestive artwork they drew of Roxanne Wolf from Five Nights at Freddy's. They said, quote, they would send me their art a lot, but this one was a jump scare suggestive one, and I was confused and sort of shocked as to why they drew the character like that. This claim is confusing, as what Dino drew was not suggestive in the slightest. Here's the sketch, and here's the finished piece. As you can see, there is nothing suggestive about the drawing. The only thing I can maybe see about the piece that could be taken as suggestive was the facial expression in the sketch, which is a very rough one and is clearly unfinished. The next thing that Moss discusses in the video is the thing about Lolita. During Moss Shadow's interactions with Dino, they had discussed how they were reading the book Lolita, written by Vladimir Nabokov. Lolita discusses the topic of pedophilia, as the main character is a man in his 30s who is attracted to a 12-year-old girl in the book. By the end of this story, the man goes to jail for his crimes, and the book itself is not a glorification of pedophilia at all. Moss Shadow, however, in the screenshots, talks about how it's just straight pedophilia with little to no context behind the book. They begin to read out quotes to Dino from the book, and we talk about how it goes into detail about what the man does to the girl in the book. However, in the video, Moss Shadow discusses the nuance of the book, and rightfully tells how it isn't just straight pedo porn like how Moss in the screenshots claims. They use the fact that Lolita is meant to be a commentary on pedophilia as a way to claim he is not a groomer. They claim that JT said he was a groomer because they read the book, but this is not true. The fact that Ma Shadow went into detail about the book, despite its content, to a minor is evidence of their weird and gross interactions with Dino, not the fact that they read the book in the first place. Moss then goes on to talk about how they added Dino to their close friend story so they could see the Murder Drones NSFW whip they were working on. Moss deflects this by saying, quote, "Not everything I draw for that fandom is porn," end quote. While this may be true, the fact that they had added Dino to their close friend's story for the sole purpose of showing them the not safe for work whip they were working on is indicative of some things. Next, Ma Shadow goes on to claim we were saying they were a zoophile for the sexual drawings he did of feral Pokemon characters. The thing is, though, we never claimed they were a zoophile. We do not believe that Ma Shadow was attracted to animals, same as how we do not believe they are attracted to children. These images were created to vent about the things that Moss had been going through at that time. While vent art is a good and healthy way to cope with your trauma, posting this art on your DeviantArt for your child audience to see is not okay. Even if these drawings were hidden by DeviantArt's mature filter, these filters are very easy to get by. It's just one click and a child is exposed to things they really shouldn't see. That is our issue with these drawings. The problem isn't that Ma Shadow is, quote, attracted to animals because they are not. The problem is that their child audience can see this stuff. Near the end of the video, Ma Shadow claims that all of what Dino and JT said in their video was hearsay, then saying, quote, "Then Dino rambles for 30 minutes straight, all of which is hearsay or claims not supported by any proof," end quote. Hearsay, as defined by North Carolina prosecutors and resource online, is, quote, "any statement made by the declarant at a time or place other than while he or she is testifying at the trial or hearing that is offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted," end quote. A declarant, as defined by Cornell Law School, is, quote, "a person who makes a statement they allege to be true," end quote. If what Ma Shadow said was true and Dino's testimony was hearsay, then Dino would be considered a declarant, a third party, a witness, even. However, that is not the case. Dino is the victim. They are the child that got groomed by Ma Shadow, meaning their statements are not hearsay, but testimony. Testimony, especially from victims, are crucial in a court of law. Now, obviously, this is not court. This is YouTube. But if you're going to bring law terms into this, if you are going to treat this like it is court, then I would kindly suggest getting your definitions right before saying anything. That just about concludes the second video that Ma Shadow made, meaning I have covered pretty much everything. All in all, Ma Shadow is still a groomer. They are still a weirdo. They still should not be supported. Most, if not all, of what Ma Shadow said in both of their videos is a flat-out lie, or the truth stretched so far it's barely even the truth. Ma Shadow says they want all this to end, but if they truly did, all they needed to do was to apologize to Dino. They did not need to make two separate videos fabricating things about my friends and myself. This situation has hurt everyone involved. It would be best if things were left as it is. With all the information that has come out, I doubt there is anything left to say. Thank you, and have a good day/night.